Hi everyone, Captain Rock here with Corpus Christi Inshore Fishing Charters. Today we're going to be talking about popping corks a little bit. Uh, Popping corks are a very effective tool that can be used throughout the year in a lot of different scenarios in saltwater fishing. Um, I'm going to talk about why I use them, how I use them, and how I rig them. So we're going to start off with the rigging portion of it. So I use a lot of times these H&H popping corks with a flexible wire. There are some other similar brands out there. I just use these. They're the cheapest ones I've found that are like this with that flexible wire, and they got a good weight to it and a good sound to it. It actually sounds like a popping shrimp, and it's got some pretty heavy duty swivels on it. It does really well with the corrosion from the salt water as well. And then I will rig it up to 30-pound test fluorocarbon leader line, not the regular line that you can put on your reel, but the actual leader line. And then I'll have a split shot on there usually, and I'll have two little overhand knots on each side of that to keep it from keep that split shot from sliding too much. Now some people would say, oh, it's an overhand knot, it's going to cut into itself and you're going to lose fish because of that, the line's going to break. Well, this is 30-pound test leader, and my main line is a 20-pound test braid. If that cuts into itself, I'm going to be highly surprised. Okay, it hasn't happened to me yet, and I've used this way for a long time. Okay, and then I just happen to have a circle hook on this one, a Trocar 2/0 circle hook for trout and redfish and the like. Hook's more of a personal preference kind of thing. You can also do this with a jig head and put gulp on the end of it, or you can just use it like this, or an octopus hook, whatever you want to use. I always say the hook depends on the angler. You know, some people with circle hooks, they've been fishing their whole life and they can't help but set that hook real hard every time, and circle hook's not for you. And then you've got other anglers that you just can't seem to get them to set the hook, or they can't seem to do it right, and this is for you. So with a circle hook, you can use it with gulp or you can use it with live bait. But usually if I'm fishing with gulp or another plastic shrimp underneath it, I'll use a jig head, just because it makes the bait last longer, stays on the hook better, and you can also do away with the split shot. Another little trick, I don't have it rigged up on this popping cork, but you can take clip weights and you can just put them right on the bottom side of this right here, and that'll add more weight to it. So if you've got kids in the boat or someone that has a hard time casting further, you can put that on there and they can make it a whole lot easier for them to cast. I usually use 1/4 ounce whenever I use them. With this size of float, it doesn't present a problem at all with the cork going down when it shouldn't. So now we'll get on to when I use them. Well, when I use them is a lot. About the only time I wouldn't consider it a go-to kind of choice is whenever I want to cover a whole lot of ground in a day, and I mean I'm just getting after it. I'm fishing as fast as I possibly can, and pretty much any other time, popping cork works just fine. It works when the water's murky, it works when the water's clear. It doesn't really matter. It can work in shallow environments, it can work in deep water well, if you're going for the right species, you know. So a lot of people, I'm going to clear this up. A lot of people will say this popping noise attracts fish. Okay, I try not to think of it so much as a way to attract fish as much as it is a way to grab their attention. So first of all, for anybody that's ever sight casted for redfish, you'll know that whenever you cast in front of them, you have a good chance of catching that fish. You put that bait in front of his face, right? If you cast over his back and the line or the lure hits his body, it's going to spook him. And if you cast behind him, he's not going to see the lure and you're not going to catch the fish. So if you take that and you apply it to deeper water fishing, whether you're fishing a deep flat or a channel, think of it like this: this popping noise makes that fish face the direction you want him to face. It makes him look at your bait because he hears that shrimp sound and noise, and he's going to turn and he's going to look at it. So let's say we're drifting a flat and we're casting into a bunch of different sand holes on that flat, and what I'll do is I'll cast this popping cork behind that sand hole on the opposite side of it, about 5 or 6 feet behind it, and then I'll pop the popping cork back into it. And whenever it's popping, that fish that's hiding in that sand hole will turn around, he'll look, think that there's a shrimp coming up at him, and then he takes your bait. Whereas if you weren't fishing with a popping cork, that fish might be facing to the left, he might be facing right, he might be facing towards you, and then your line hits him, your lure hits him, and then he spooks off. You know, you'll never know because you can't see. But so yes, that's how I'll use these in a flat. If I'm fishing a channel drop off, I might cast over into the shallow area and then pop this popping cork back until it is in the right on the drop off, and it turns that fish to where he's looking at that drop off, waiting for that shrimp to come over that ledge. Okay, it's a very effective tool. It can be used in a lot of different scenarios. You can use it in the summertime. You can fish it fast. You know, if you're, once again, going back to a drift in a flat, you can just cast into that sand hole or cast behind it, pop your way into it, give it about 10-15 seconds in that sand hole. You don't catch anything, reel it all the way in, cast to the next sand hole, and you can cast or work just about as much ground as you can with a lot of other lures. Or if you want to work it slow, let's say it's winter time, in that same scenario, you can cast it behind that sand hole, whatever, do the same thing, and then leave it in there for 30-40 seconds or 30 to 45 seconds, something like that, you know, however long it takes. And meanwhile your bait's out of the grass, it's in a good strike position, and especially in the winter time, you allow that fish to just have that meal right in front of his face to where he can't pass it up, you know. So those are just some of the scenarios that this works really well in. Let's say it's really murky water, you got high winds, whatever it may be, and you can't see much. Well, then you can throw it out, and you know, you can just continually work it almost like it's a paddle tail lure. You know, you just pop, 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 and then let it sit there for just a few seconds, and then pop, 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 and let it sit there for a few seconds, and then that way your cork or your bait is constantly moving, and it allows that fish plenty of time to hear and find that bait and then get it, even in that murky water where the fish can't see. So like I said, it's a very effective tool. You can't dismiss it as just something that's you know, for beginner anglers. I know a lot of experienced anglers that won't pick them up just because of that. You know, they maybe it's their pride, whatever, but they just won't give it a shot. Well, once you learn to use this as an effective tool, you'll find that it's pretty difficult to beat in a lot of other scenarios. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, feel free to message me and I'll get back to it as quick as I can. Again, I'm Captain Rock from Corpus Christi Inshore Fishing Charters. If you'd like to check out more fishing tips, you can check out my Facebook. It's Corpus Christi Inshore Fishing Charters. Or if you're interested in booking a trip, you can go to my website at www.corpuschristiinshorefishingcharters.com. Until then, y'all be safe and tight lines.